Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you here, and welcome to our second day, our full day of panels at the Documentary Preservation Summit. My name is Ken Jacobson. I'm Director of Educational Programs and Strategic Partnerships at the International Documentary Association. I want to start just by thanking our sponsors, the Rafaela and the entire Doc NYC team, IFC Center, and you for being here. I also want to just let you know that things really got started last night, I think for me, when Sandra Schulberg said this was a movement. So in light of that, I definitely would urge you to tweet with the hashtag SaveDocs, and as you go through the day and think about these issues, think about how we can move forward collectively as a community on these issues. Also, I just want to mention that wearing my IDA recruitment hat, we have a special membership deal today only. So if you're not an IDA member, it's a great organization to join. Go back to the when you leave, go out to the information and registration table. We have information there, and it's a great deal, only available on today only. So check it out. Finally, I want to thank our panelists for participating. Looking forward to hearing them this morning. And a special thanks to Tom Powers, who's taking the initiative on this issue and really made this event happen. So turning it over to you. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. I know a lot of you were here last night. For those of you who weren't here last night, I encourage you to look on Twitter under the SaveDocs hashtag. There's a lot of reporting on what happened here last night. Also, an incredibly thorough blog postings on D-Word. If you're not a member of D-Word, you should certainly sign on. It's free to documentary professionals, d-word.com. And Eli Brown, who's sitting right over there alongside Doug Block, D-Word's founder, is giving an incredible, thorough interpretation of what's going on today. So thank you, Eli Brown and Doug Block. You've got the handouts today, so you can kind of get an overview of what's happening. Today's this first panel, earning new revenue off old films, gets at a part of the conversation that I think is very much missing sometimes in archival circles, which is, is there any money to be made off this stuff? And that is, such a catching point for everything else that has to happen as well. Why would we put in this much money to save a film if there's no money to be made? I don't know that we have a magic wand around this subject, but we do have a lot of people who are working around this subject in very interesting ways. A lot of new developments happening in this area to empower filmmakers to kind of take control of their own works and find new revenue for older films. So I'm going to have each panelist come up one by one and give a kind of short presentation of what they do, and then I'll bring all the panelists up together, and we can open this up for a dialogue with the audience and give you a chance to ask your questions. The first person I'm going to bring up is George Schmaltz from Kickstarter. Come on up, George. Kickstarter, which I'm sure all of you know. You can sit right here. I'm sure all of you know as a place where people go to raise money for new projects. Of course, not just films, but inventions and you name it. But it's also been quite successfully used to raise money for film restoration projects, and George has a real passion for that, and he's going to talk about some of the success stories that you've had doing that. So. But I'll let you drive this, and I'll chime in with my questions if needed.
Okay. Thank you. Hi. So my name's George. So I'm one of the film outreach leads at Kickstarter. We work with not only So I guess I assume everyone knows what Kickstarter is, and for the most part, we have a lot of projects coming in for different phases of production, from pre to post, to festival fees and everything in between. We've also had places like Scarecrow Video come on site to save their video store. We've had movie theaters come to us to help them digitize, basically, with these changes coming, or even to raise funds for seats. We had a very small number of projects over the past 5 or so years that have come to the site to use it for restoration or preservation of film, and I noticed, I was kind of watching this, and I have a distribution background, and I do have a love for it, and coming from distribution, where so many conversations were, well, we don't know if anyone will really want this, so we're not going to put this out. We're not going to put the money into it because it might just be a loss. And so I was kind of thinking about it, and I think every restoration project we've seen has been successful thus far. And so I was thinking, well, this is a small thing, but this could be a bigger thing, and there's definitely a community that wants this. And I think Kickstarter is a great platform to basically serve as a proof of concept. You can, if you have the rights to a film or you want to restore a film, you can put it out to the world and say, this is what I want to do. I want to do 2K restoration. I want to preserve this on film, however you want to do it. And it's going to cost X amount of money to make this happen. And if you have the audience, the people will come out and they'll support it, and they will back it to get a copy of whatever it is you're making. And, go from there. So I just wanted to highlight a few. Oh, next. Sorry. And next. And oh yeah. So before I get to the examples, so with all that said, Kickstarter's really embraced this idea of archiving material, not only in film. Film was kind of the spearhead for it, but also we've had music projects, we've had publishing projects, we've had comics projects, and we're really trying to put a focus on this. Kind of starting the tail end of January, we had a kickoff event with the first 5 film projects. And since then, we've seen 25 projects in publishing, film, comics. There's I think up there right now, there's a project to restore a building in Greensboro, North Carolina, that they're turning into an art space. So it's really, we hope to eventually for this to be a site-wide thing where all 15 categories are using this in some capacity to help keep things alive or bring things back to the world that might have disappeared for years. So we're calling it the Archives Project. It's been alive since January. We've had 6 film-specific projects, and then another one that's kind of a combo film music project come to us so far. We have others lined up throughout the rest of the year. I did want to highlight a few of the past projects before we really started putting a focus on this, and some of the current ones as well. So next. So this first one, this was one of the early restoration projects that really proved to me that this is a concept that works on Kickstarter. Milestone Films restored Portrait of Jason. We showed it in our film festival 2 years ago, or some excerpts of it in our film festival a few years ago. But as you see, they raised $26,000 for this. And
here's where I'd like to chime in, George. I should say that at Milestone Films, Dennis Doros, who runs Milestone Films with Amy Heller, is going to be here on a panel, on the next panel at noon, talking about another film. But in the case of this, Shirley Clark is a filmmaker who's probably known maybe in critical circles and academic circles, not very well known to the general public. Do you have any insight into what the drivers were to raising that $26,000?
This was before my time, but I am happy to guess. I think Shirley Clark does have a specific fan base. I think there are fans of restoration in general, but I think probably the big driver was Milestone Films itself and the fan base that they had and the relationships that they have. I think that was probably the real force behind this project being successful. And this is a film that Union Docs, they actually did this is part of the initiative in January. Their project was called Living Los Suris. It was a combination project. So they restored the film Los Suris, which was a 1984 documentary about a Williamsburg sub-neighborhood. They were they were updating it to today. So 30 years later, you can come back, and they're doing a collection of short films around the subjects of the original film. And then also they were creating an interactive website that I thought was really interesting. What they were doing was they were going back into the original film and kind of scene by scene breaking it down, and kind of as you could click over like the style someone was wearing or the music that was playing in the background or the car in the background or something like that, and get kind of like a factoid about what this was and what this, like in the context of 1984, what this might have meant. Yeah, that's touching on theirs. They raised 33, I think. And this is another one. This is actually before my time as well, or before the initiative at least. Henry Chalfant raised money to restore outtakes of Style Wars, not even the film itself, which I thought that was interesting. And I think here this is an example probably where I think this was such a cult film and such a cult, or such a following around graffiti culture and I guess New York culture really in general, that I think it was successful. But I did think it was interesting that he had raised funds just to do the outtakes, not for the entire film.
And do you know, when he was asking people to contribute money for the outtakes, was there a promise about what would be done with them? Was part of this effort that they were going to put them online, or was it really just these should be saved and put into a better format?
These were definitely going to be made available for sure. I think
that was part of the call to action.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with any successful Kickstarter project is 99% of the time you should be offering a way to see whatever it is you're making, or if you're doing like a tech project, like to get the gadget in your hand at a reasonable price. So I would venture that if he wasn't offering these and he was just restoring these, it would have been a little bit harder for him to get what he needed. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, and then this is Kino Lorber. These guys, this was part of this initiative in January, that launched in January. They were restoring 8 silent era and early sound African American films. They started out with a $35,000 goal, and ultimately they were going to put these out in a box set next February. But as they crossed that goal and they kind of got bigger and bigger and more successful, they were able to add more and more films to it. So I think they topped out at a dozen films that they were restoring.
And so up here it says they raised $53,000. Do you have an understanding of, did $53,000 enable them to completely pay off their their goals for preservation here, or was this being matched by other funds? Do you know?
I know that while they had some money themselves, obviously, but also they were working with Library of Congress. I think they were talking to UCLA Film Archive. I don't know if that was ever confirmed yet. I can't speak for what they did, but I know they were talking to different archives around the country to kind of bring this all together. Yeah. And this is just my last example. And I really wanted to highlight docs, or as close to docs that we had, because we've had a lot of narrative films come through to use the site. And this is not quite a doc. It's David Reicher's La Ciudad. But I do think it's a late 90s film that it's his first film he came to the site to restore. And I did think it's a really interesting, really nice looking black and white film, filmed in New York in the late 90s, and you get a really good sense of the culture at the time, I think. But it is a narrative film. And he came to us last November, and it was actually right around the time we started talking about making this a thing on site, is he kind of magically showed up, and it kind of just helped prove my thought that this is a thing that we should be doing.
So, we could give probably a full-day seminar on Kickstarter advice, which we don't have time for today. But for people in the audience who, might have a project that they would like to preserve and try out a Kickstarter campaign, 2 questions. One is, if they want to kind of be under the umbrella of this project that you're talking about, what's the process for that?
So, I mean, the bare bones is I'm searching the site all the time to see if things come up, and we have maybe, some things come in outside of us, and if they do, like I'm reaching out, or a music person's reaching out, or publishing person's reaching out. But otherwise, we're seeking out these projects, or really, if you do have something, I'm happy, if it's a film, if it's whatever, I'm happy to talk to you and kind of get the ball rolling on how we can help you and how this might be able to fit within this specific initiative. And if it's not a film project, I can definitely connect you to the person in the music, the publishing, the tech world that would be much more helpful than me.
So my last question for now, for someone who's never done a Kickstarter campaign project before, are there like 3 pieces of top advice you give them? I mean, first of all, what's a resource that they could go to dive deeper into more advice, and what else would you say to people?
All right. Well, so there's the Kickstarter FAQ. You just go to our site. I think it's kickstarter.com/FAQ. Don't hold me to that, but if you type in FAQ Kickstarter on Google, you'll find that. So that's definitely a way to kind of get started and get an idea. Just every question you could ever think of is there. But top advice is be transparent, have a clear idea of what it is you're making. Be sure to offer what you're doing at a reasonable price. And by reasonable, I mean think of, well, if you're making a film or if you're restoring a film, think, well, how much would I be selling the Blu-ray for later on? And maybe you can do a little bit of a premium, but for the most part, you want it to be reasonable. And then be communicative with all your backers and be sure to just respond to people when they ask. And then, one last one is be prepared. Kickstarter is not a site where you just put up the thing and money comes in. There's a little bit of work, and there's a
lot of work, a hell of a lot of work.
A lot of work, sure. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's just being prepared. And I think
kiss your kids goodbye before you begin this project.
Give yourself a month in a room. But the more you can be prepared, I think the less work it'll be while it's actually live. And by being prepared, I mean get all your contact lists together. Really strategize. I'm making this is the film that I'm restoring. Who's interested in this? What organizations are interested in this? And getting people on board before you launch, because the last thing you want to do is hit the launch button with the ticking clock and then be like, okay, so who am I going to reach out to? You definitely don't want to do that.
Okay, George, I'm going to send you back to your seat, and we'll bring you back up later for questions. So our next speaker is Jeremy Boxer from Vimeo, and I think I'm just going to bring a microphone over to Jeremy so he can drive his site and take us to the world of Vimeo. So, as kind of intro to Jeremy, I think that there's one of the most exciting things to me happening in film distribution now is the ability for filmmakers to take a little bit more control of their own distribution. It's by no means an ultimate solution, and by no means completely takes the place of other established distributors, but it's an important component certainly for works that aren't getting attention from established distributors, and even for works that do have established distributors. I think it's an important complement for filmmakers to develop, and I think that some of the platforms that are around today, and we're going to hear from 2 of them at Vimeo and VHX, are very exciting opportunities for filmmakers to keep their back catalog alive. So, Jeremy Boxer from Vimeo.
Hi, everybody. How many of you know of Vimeo On Demand? Okay. So I'll just be very brief in terms of what Vimeo On Demand does. We built this site, this part of our platform, after having a number of years of people asking us, how am I going to monetize my work? And so what we try to do is create an ultimately flexible platform for you to decide how to monetize your work. And we give you the opportunity to choose where in the world you want to sell your film. You can be in one country, you can be in all the countries, you can be all the countries but one country. You can choose what price you want to sell your film for. You can choose from $1 up to $10,000. And the reason for that is that we have people who are doing courses and selling educational stuff, all different types of things. It's anybody who wants to sell video in general. And so you are able to do that. We are able to sell in multiple different currencies. You can have different languages. You can sell or rent. You can have it a rental time period from a day to a year. It's completely flexible. So we wanted to allow filmmakers and creators to have the ability to pick what the best distribution strategy for their film would be by doing that. So here's our homepage. You can see a number of different types of projects that are on here. We have a number of different documentaries that are on here. We sometimes work with documentary filmmakers and get exclusive windows on those documentaries by giving them either marketing advances or MGs, and it just depends on what we're doing with those people. But we've recently started to talk to a number of different filmmakers about bringing archives of their whole collection of different filmmakers onto the platform. I think what is interesting in terms of the subject matter of today is to kind of think about the idea of contextual placement. The interesting thing about the way that the web works is the fact that you can galvanize different pockets of different audiences to bring them either to a Kickstarter campaign, to drive them to one place where they can all congregate together and help something come up and bubble up, but also equally you can do so in terms of a film and distribution. So one of the when I was doing my research, I kind of stumbled upon this. Nanook of the North was just put up on the site, which I thought was appropriate since it was one of the earlier ones. But and
Jeremy, who was putting up Nanook of the North?
It was Flickr. Hold on a second. This froze.
Is Nanook of the North now a public domain?
Well, I mean, Flickr Alley has put up a number of different titles, and I think it might be a public domain thing, but they were dealing with it through their DVD, and they've kind of put up a number of different projects. So it's been interesting in that kind of way. So what I wanted to talk about in a way was this one project that we worked on was called Everybody Street. It's an interesting topic because it's a documentary about street photography. And the interesting part here was about looking at bonus clips, bonus interviews, and looking at the works of 8, I believe, well-known street photographers from New York. And the documentary went into all of their lives, but what we were able to do with the team that was behind it was to market and using all the 8 different photographers their audiences to drive back to the film. So can I switch to the slide? Is that here? Okay. Just be further down. Okay, so this was part of the strategy that we worked with them on, and what I found was interesting here is to look at the idea of contextual placement and looking at how you can galvanize your audiences and where you can find them. And in terms of this film, they did many different things. They did like a postcard series where they released that during their theatrical campaign, but they had discount codes going to there. But each of those postcards were from the different photographers. They had exclusive clips going to different blogs. So they used the different bonus clips and the different kind of ideas there to drive from different kind of resources back to the center core of the film. They had small theatrical runs and extended runs that drove back as well. Each theatrical run, you got a discount code for the download as well. There were multiple different ways of doing it, and also they had a Instagram campaign that ran for a year and a half, where they put a different picture up from a street photographer for the entire year and a half. And each time they didn't necessarily pick only the street photographers that were involved in that film. They also picked other street photographers, and they did blog posts on their website, which drew other street photographers' audiences into the film itself. So when you're looking at it in terms of a context of potentially archive and potentially working with, let's say, a body of work from a filmmaker, you can look at it in terms of how each individual film has its own subject matter that will also drive to the core of like the whole collection of the filmmaker itself. So recently we've done something as well with, this is not a documentary filmmaker, but launched today was HalHartley.com. Hal Hartley's film Ned Rifle launches today. He also brought a number of his films online as well. And so we can see like, and so what the interesting thing here is like, we worked with him to bring the majority of his projects back online and using the case of relaunching one of the films to bring interest to the rest of the archive. That's another kind of approach that we've seen that people have done. But in essence, the other idea is like when you have your films digitized and online and ready and potentially able to be reactive as well. So let's say there's a news story that comes out that is relative to a film that has been put into, that is an archive film that wants to be re-brought back out. So you can be reactive and you can be working with different news outlets by showing clips that can drive back. One of the things that we have as part of the technology is to enable you to have a number of different clips to be associated back to the actual film so you can buy from the clips. So you can either buy from the clips or you can buy from the trailer, and those can happen anywhere on any site. So in effect, you're setting up what is like virtual lemonade stands in different places. And so in that way, you have a contextual relevance to everything that you're doing. So it can be all about subject matter, and it could be all about finding your audiences where they live.
So in a way, just so I understand this, like if I tweeted, if you had this set up for a Hal Hartley trailer,
yeah.
I could tweet the trailer, someone could watch the trailer off my Twitter feed, and at the end it'll say, you can watch this film now, pay to watch
yeah.
this film now, click a button, and you're
Absolutely,
in.
Yeah. So it's more a matter of like finding, putting the films where the people live. And so it's kind of a balancing act in that kind of way. Go ahead.
You spoke about the platform or taking a specific subject of a specific film,
Mm-hmm.
and it tended to be 8 different little films or 8 different people who
Yeah.
were part of the
About that one film, yeah.
same subject. So when you did all of that work, did you do an evaluation afterwards to see the outcome of all the work that was
Mm-hmm.
put into it?
Well, this was done by those filmmakers, and they shared with me that that kind of approach that they took. But they did find, like for example, where they did their event theatricals, and they did theatricals all across the year, that each time they did a theatrical, they had a big spike in terms of sales of the film online. It was more a matter of like how different things drive, attention drives much more sales in any way possible. So their theatrical, they kept on talking about the online, and all those people then shared the trailer to their friends on their social networks, which then caused a new audience to emerge online as well. No worries.
And Jeremy, like another variation on that question, when people are putting up outtakes from their films,
yeah.
or different versions than the actual film itself,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any data yet on how much that stuff is being watched and purchased? And
Well, I mean, we don't have like specific data across the board in that way, but what we do know is that every
anecdotal stories?
Yeah, no, I mean the anecdotal stories is like basically in terms of when you're looking for press, most people want an exclusive piece of a clip or exclusive content. But having the multiple different pieces going to multiple different outlets all drove back much more attention to the into the pieces than just the same trailer being embedded in all the different on all the different websites. And then also you could have more contextually relevant clips that are related to that news outlet. So we're working on a film at the moment, another documentary that is fashion, and it's more about we're looking at how the individual kind of subsets of the fashion work, and then placing relevant information with the relevant audiences to draw the different audiences back into the center core.
And so if people want to start a conversation with Vimeo about their work, how does that happen?
The best idea is just to email me. My email is just jeremy@vimeo.com.
Next person up is Adam Klaff from VHX. Adam is, we'll talk about VHX in general, but he's also going to share a specific case study of the film Hands on a Hard Body. How many people know the film Hands on a Hard Body? So this film, for anyone who's seen it, it's considered something of a modern classic, and but for many years it was totally unavailable. It was a film that I would always invoke. I would always tell my students about, and it became clear to me that actually they didn't have any means to easily see it besides tracking down an old copy. And the director a few years ago had a new incentive to get the film out, and that a Broadway musical, Hands on a Hard Body, was coming out. But when he, started to investigate what it was going to take to bring his film out, he made a kind of horrifying realization, which was that the film's original distributor, who was long out of business, really there was no copies to be had of the masters to easily put this film out there. So he went back to his original, I believe, high 8 tapes and reconformed the whole film from his original high 8 tapes, which is extraordinary that those high 8 tapes even held up. When he was ready to put the film out, he began a conversation with the folks at VHX.
My name's Adam. I work at VHX, and VHX is a platform to help artists and distributors and creators and anyone with video sell their work from their own website. So I guess that's kind of the distinction here. We're not a central marketplace where people are coming to shop for films. Every title on VHX has its own branded destination where the creator or the content really owns that relationship with the audience and is able to kind of showcase their work in really a very flexible way. I want to jump right into Hands on a Hard Body because I think it's a really good example. And I think as you're thinking about your old work and how to earn revenue from your old films, there's some interesting strategies that Rob, the director, employed, and that we've seen other filmmakers on VHX do as well. I'd say the number one thing that kind of you should look at if you have an old film that you're trying to earn revenue from is opportunity, something external, some reason to put it out there. In the case of Rob, there was a Broadway musical that was being released. There was an ability to sell the film not only on the web, but actually the initial plan was to sell it at the show, which he ended up doing. He made DVDs that he could get at the merch table at the Broadway show. This is a film that, as many of you know, the only way to watch it was to spend hundreds of dollars buying VHS tapes on eBay. Unfortunately, VHS players are not in as wide circulation as they once were. So he figured, I want to just have the ability to get this film out there. But the cost of DVD manufacturing was very high. And he, in addition to just the film, when he went back to those tapes, he found that he had all this amazing footage, all these extended interviews with people from the film, with the subjects, with just different clips that had never seen the light of day before. And that stuff won't fit on a DVD because he was limited by the runtime and the mastering cost and the menu expense and the manufacturing. So he did something really interesting, which was he sold the film itself on DVD, but you could also buy the deluxe edition DVD at the merch table, which was the same exact thing, but it just had a code in it where you could go to the website and redeem the bonus material. So the advantage of the web at large is that you're really it's really limitless in terms of how much content you can put out there, what's the format, what's the price, what's the offering. You're not limited by the dimensions of a thumbnail on a store, or iTunes says a movie has to be this long or a TV show has to be this long. Really all bets are off. So he was able to create kind of a destination, and I can show you the site now. You go to the website, you learn about the film, you can buy the DVD, and you can also buy buy 3 different packages: the standard package, the bonus stuff alone, and then the deluxe, which has everything included. This is kind of our checkout experience here, and you're actually going to get all these different videos. So it's a huge amount of material. It's many hours of material, actually. I can tell you that almost nobody buys just the bonus material on its own. Almost everyone who visits the site and makes a purchase, which now in the past 2 years is many, many thousands of people, have bought this deluxe package for, for I think it's something like $15 or $20. So.
Is a hard body a kind of a car?
Oh yeah, sorry. So Hands on a Hard Body, for those who don't know, is a documentary about a competition in Texas where you had to keep your hands on a truck, and whoever kept their hands on the truck the longest without leaning on it or sitting down won the truck. So
I would always describe this to my students as the best documentary idea ever, because most films you need to wait months or years for a story arc to develop. This was a story arc that takes place in 48 hours, more or less. It's beginning, middle, and end.
Yes, exactly. So that was a really great thing. The Broadway musical was not a hit, unfortunately. It closed after a few weeks, but now we have this permanent storefront where all of these film students and all of these people around the world who are hearing about this movie can just Google it, and they're going to end up at a place where they can buy it. They're not going to have to hunt around, garage sales or eBay, to spend a huge amount of money to discover this. The other thing that was interesting about this was, when Rob went back and remastered everything. He couldn't get the movie on iTunes. iTunes does not take SD content, so he kind of had no choice but to put it out this way. But I think ultimately it was a really great experience because he was able to give the film this showcase. This is a lot more compelling, I think, visually and from an experience standpoint than something that might actually undersell the movie. So that was really interesting. And there's actually 2 other examples I just want to give. This one has less to do with VHX specifically, but this is a great idea. I'm just a huge fan of what Gary Hosford has done with his films. So Gary Hosford is a documentary filmmaker. He's well known for what's called a series of films known as the Design Trilogy. One is Helvetica, the other is Objectified, and the other is Urbanized. And it really looks at modern design and graphic design and architecture and all these great artists that are working in those fields. Highly recommend the movies. I think they're all on Netflix. You can also buy them here, which I also recommend. So Gary is selling these movies on his website directly. He's someone that's really been outspoken about artist independence, about owning your work, about owning the relationship with your fans, and really building your career on your own. So these films are old. They are several years old, each of them. But what Gary did was he repurposed material from the films to sell something that wasn't actually the films themselves. He did a Kickstarter campaign, which I think raised a lot of money, to actually go back to the raw interviews from the movie and transcribe them into books. And he's selling those books. So I think the idea is, when you're looking back at the things you have, you can be a lot more creative than just putting a price tag on the work itself. That's a great thing to do, and the work obviously is what you lead with. But in terms of an experience and in terms of offering value, there might be other things there that you can really take advantage of. And because Gary has been so focused on being direct the entire time, he has the email list from his Kickstarter campaigns. He has the email list from people that have bought the movies. He's able to really build a community around his work and really turned his work into a franchise. Like this is no different than Marvel or Harry Potter. This is just really just identifying all the little pieces of value in the work that you have and figuring out creative ways to take advantage of them. The last example I want to give is a film that worked with us called Citizen Coke. This is directed by Tia Leston and Carl Deal. The movie this is about Citizens United and the Koch brothers. The movie's profile raised got very high last year when PBS canceled their funding because of a perceived conflict of interest. One of the Koch brothers is on the board of WGBH, and they lost their funding. WNET. So they had to they turned to Kickstarter to finish the funds for the film. They did a theatrical. They sold the movie on the website. But what they did then was they realized, and as some of you might realize when you have new work, the rights to their previous film, Trouble the Water, which was about Hurricane Katrina and was nominated for an Academy Award, the rights had reverted back from their distributor. I think it was something like 4 or 5 years previous. They now had the rights. So they took that opportunity to roll the email list, and on VHX you get all that data, and you want to be using that data to figure out how to grow your other projects, to actually relaunch Trouble the Water. So this is the website they had, and you can buy and stream the movie immediately from the site as well. So I think one thing to think about is why you're putting something out there, why you're going to go back and spend the time and the money to remaster this old work, and figure out kind of an opportunity that you can really take advantage of and essentially ride the wave of to get your work out there. And I think what we're seeing with a lot of this stuff is once you have it out there in a form that people can get this way, you really open up the opportunity in many other ways. And it could be someone like Gary who's selling the books. It could be the ability to license it now to other buyers. Now that there's a remastered version of Hands on a Hardbody out there that's clean, that is new, that opens up opportunities for television and subscription VOD and all these other things that weren't there before as other new platforms and other buyers emerge. So I think these are really great strategies, and there's many others you could take advantage of, and happy to talk about specifics on people's work too.
Thank you, Adam. I'm going to bring up our fourth and final panelist, Lynn Pan from Sundance Now Doc Club. Many of you know Sundance Now Doc Club, maybe because our street teams have talked to you about it. And here, come up, sit right here, and talk to you about it in our lobby. And I know many of you have talked to me about being members of Sundance Now Doc Club. It's a streaming platform. I'll let Linda describe it more. But many of you may know that I'm a curator on the site. I've been doing that for 3 years, but it's really been in the last year since Linda Pan came on and started overseeing the site that it's really gone through some dramatic improvements in its design and functionality, and I have to give Linda a tremendous amount of credit for everything that Sundance Now Doc Club is right now and is still evolving as.
Thank you, Tom. So I'm going to take a cue from Jeremy's question is, how many of you have heard of Sundance Now Doc Club? Oh, great. Amazing. In a lot of ways, I think of Doc Club as something fairly new, even though it's been in existence for, as Tom said, 3 years. We relaunched the service completely last October, so really, we're kind of in the 6-month mark of the service. And when we started, it really was coming from a point of view that people like to get recommendations from their friends and experts when it comes to movies. And we specifically felt like with docs, there's so many docs out there that it was so overwhelming for the general public and self-proclaimed documentary fans to really decide what to watch. And we started Doc Club as really a place where we could work with festival programmers, experts, influencers, and put forth some curated recommendations of documentary films. And, we're really the only subscription VOD service that's dedicated entirely to documentary film. We're available globally. We're currently available across a lot of different access points. We're on the web. We're on iOS, which is your iPhone, iPad. We're on your Android phone, Android tablets, Chromecast, Roku. We're getting on Apple TV later this year. So we're very much about bringing this curated, documentary-specific streaming video service experience to all of your streaming devices. And I'm going to focus just this quick set of slide talk on the topic of documentary restoration. But if you're interested in learning more, you can definitely just go to our site or talk to Nathan in the lobby, who's our rep. So I guess here, in terms of I think by focusing just on the documentary genre, what we really do is we look at a mix of different types of documentaries, right? So part of what I'm not going to talk about today is really around, new releases, like films that are new and going to festivals, or even on the production side. So, we just made our first festival acquisition, and we're aggressive in going into the space. And we want to offer our members, access to new documentary films from the latest festivals. And, we want to start producing new documentaries ourselves. But leaving that aside, a big part of what we do is curating from this great library of documentary film that exists. And this goes back decades. And what we found when we started to look in the marketplace was that, there were great documentary films that are no longer available on your, main digital sites. And this is inclusive of Netflix, Amazon, iTunes, right? There's so much focus on the new, which is great. There's a whole machinery around promoting the new, and I think that's amazing. But what we found was, holy crap! I mean, there were Academy Award-winning docs, just great quality docs that really you can't find anywhere. You're Googling it and you can't watch it anywhere. And I primarily, I've stopped buying DVDs at this point, right? I'm primarily watching online. So we really wanted to have, to build Doc Club as a place where we're curating through the canon of documentary films and bringing to light these gems. So I guess we could move to the next slide then. This is just, I don't know why it's all blurry, but this is just a screenshot of the experience. And, while we do, as a user, that people can browse through the different documentary films in our service through your typical kind of subgenres and, look through topics. This is our other way of sort of allowing people to discover docs, which is what we call curated collections. And these collections are created, with Tom Powers, and we also work with other festival programmers. So we worked with the Sundance Festival programmers in January, and they curated their favorite docs. We've worked with influencers like Ira Glass, where he's picked some of his favorite docs. And in a lot of ways, we found that it's so powerful to have the expert and the influencer to say, these are great films. And we make a point to not overwhelm people, right? We're not giving them a list of 100. When you look at this top 100 docs to watch, like, how do you even go through that whole list? We try to limit it to, sort of around 10. And we make a point to tell people why they're great. And we allow our curators to have their own voice, to really, have supply their personal anecdotes, right? So we have a place for people to kind of put in their own takes on a particular doc. And, I'll have to say that when we worked with Ira Glass, and he was picking his favorite docs, in a way, it part of sort of the preservation of docs. Some of the docs he picked, one of them was called The Cruise, which is Bennett Miller's first doc. And it actually was not available anywhere else. And I personally, it had never seen it, and and so it was a learning process for me too. Like, wow, like this sounds like a great doc. Where is it? So we went and acquired it, and we actually also then did a screening with Ira and Bennett here at the IFC Center. And the response from the audience is just great, right? It's wow, how come I've never heard of this doc? What a great doc. And this is exactly the kind of response we want from people, is to, part of our role at Doc Club is to, get people to watch more docs, but also sort of discover docs both old and new. And we really truly believe that curation is a way to get there. So we could go to the next slide here. This is the last slide. This is just some examples of docs that we've really, I wouldn't say restored. I'd love to get more into the restoration business, but this is really
take advantage of other people's.
Yeah. Thank you, Kickstarter. Thank you, everyone. This is about making docs that may have been forgotten, and may not have really be part of the zeitgeist of today, and bringing it into today and telling people why it's interesting. And so, Showa and the Drew collection, which we made available digitally for the first time, working with Jill Drew at Drew Associates, getting the first sort of HD restored version of Hoop Dreams. I mean, what we do here is we think about the marketing piece of it, right? What we want to do is get it into the conversation of today, which is very difficult because, the conversations really focus on the new. So I
would say another good example of that just last week is that in January, when we knew that the Jinx was coming out, we realized that was going to be an opportunity to bring back the Staircase. And so the week after the Jinx ended, we brought the Staircase, which if you've never seen the Staircase,
it's great.
Be prepared to set aside several hours to watch it. It's one of the most absorbing serial documentaries ever, and you can watch it on Dot Club.
But it's about connecting the dots, right? And that's what we try to do with these older docs, is to connect it to something that's relevant today, right? And generate conversation around it. And ultimately, it gets people to go and check out something like the Drew Associates collection and to watch a film from the collection. And, that is, I think, part of the equation to restoration. I mean, I guess there is, certainly an argument to be made for restoring's sake and to have that as a keepsake. But for us, it's about then building a new audience for something great, right? Which is meant to be seen. And so, so that's, those are some of the examples, and we want to do more of it. Part of, as I said in the beginning, the mission for Doc Club is to really, be a place where people who like docs, who want to learn more about docs, who are interested in this genre, can get the full spectrum of the experience, from, access to something from the 1960s to something from, this year's Sundance.
Thank you, Linda. And really, there's so many new things coming out each month on Doc Club. It's a very exciting time. Let me bring back Jeremy, Adam, and George to join us on stage here, and we're going to open this up for 15 minutes for your questions. And I would say, I know Jeremy has to go in 5 minutes, so I'll take the first round of questions. If you have a Vimeo-specific question, you put your hand up first, and we'll get Jeremy while he's still here. In the very back, a Vimeo question.
We have two curators that are looking at stuff all the time.
The question, if anyone didn't hear it, is how Vimeo chooses what to platform on their homepage.
Sure, it's done by curation mostly. We have a couple of curators that are looking through stuff. Also, we bring stuff that we usually do groupings to do with film festivals. For example, if a film festival is coming up, we resurface all the work from that film festival that's been there. But it's usually through our curators who spend countless hours looking through everything that's on the site that bubbles up to them as well.
And I'm curious, how often is that refreshed?
It's refreshed weekly.
Any other Vimeo? Yeah, right there.
Yeah, hi. I'm curious, since we're talking about older stuff.
Sure.
How you guys handle music rights and things like that. I have stuff on YouTube, and the YouTube spider immediately figures out that some 1985 doc I did is using Frank Sinatra song in the background. How do you guys handle that?
Well, I mean, you have to have the rights to the music in terms of if you put everything up on our site. So part of our terms of service is that you say that you have the rights, and if we have similar systems that work in that way, but also if someone approaches us and says that you don't have the rights to that song and gives us a DMCA, we have to take it down. So it's all dependent on you having the rights to your stuff.
Question in the middle there. So, great question. This is, how distinguishing between home video and educational. As many of you know, in the documentary world, lots of documentary filmmakers have made a significant part of their income off of educational specific distribution. That an institution like a university might pay $250 or $400 for the rights to show a film in an institutional setting. And if there's a $15 version of that film, it's sometimes worried that it's going to de-incentivize those professors to pay the institutional rates. Any experience with that?
I don't have any direct experience in terms of talking about that, but we've had a number of people talk to us about putting collections together specifically for educational purposes. So having like the film and tons of extra archive stuff. In terms of extended interviews or even coursework, or building it into a website which will be unlocked by an educational person. Like it just depends. You can choose your price point from like all the way up. You can have a $300 version of the film up there as well. But I don't see that the difference in what we're experiencing digitally is the same as having like the same film being available in a DVD store for $15 versus it being available for educational purposes too.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, a lot of documentary filmmakers, obviously, as Tom mentioned, the educational market is really important. In some cases, on VHX specifically, our terms of service with the consumer are not for a site license. So we're not set up legally to sell that kind of have that kind of transaction. Obviously, some libraries, just buy things on the consumer way anyway. People have done really one of two things. They've either set themselves up with an educational distributor outside of us, and then had the language be very clear that the purchase is meant for individual use only. If you want an educational copy, go here and buy it this way, which I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of groans, but from what I'm told, a lot of libraries follow that, depending on the institution, depending on the who you're dealing with. But some people have actually windowed their content that way. So like if it's really that important to you, and you know that there's going to be demand in the educational market, and you want to protect that at all costs, you have a period of time where it's only available for $300, and that way, and then the consumer might come after that. So I think it's true. Like once you're available at a consumer price point, you are available at a consumer price point. So you just have to sort of be aware of that.
Thank you. Doug Block?
Since we are talking about earning new revenue, can you give us a sense of, first of all, the exclusivity? Do you do exclusives, or are they all non-exclusive deals? Do you give advances, and what's the breakdown between splits for filmmakers versus
So the package of questions there was exclusivity, who has exclusivity or non-exclusivity, what's the split with filmmakers, and are there advances for filmmakers?
We are a completely non-exclusive platform. If we provide money up front in terms of an advance, in terms of a marketing advance, or in terms of an MG, then we ask for an exclusive time period to recoup that money. And those are just case by case dependent. The split is 90-10 in the artist's favor.
We do a mix of exclusive and non-exclusive, and we evaluate on a title-by-title basis. We offer just a straight-up license fee up front for a particular license period, sort of typical of the SVOD market.
One thing that I should say is on our platform, you retain all the rights to your work.
Yeah, we're similar. We're 90-10 split in the artist's favor. We don't do exclusive deals. We're not a buyer. We do not provide. We don't license. We don't pay to license content. It's really very much about the artist taking their own work in their hands.
And I guess I should just say, since everyone else did, and we're a little bit different than everyone else, but we take 5% of successful projects, 0% if you're unsuccessful. So you essentially use us, and you'll be keeping 95. Well, you'll end up keeping 90% of your money because there's a credit card processing fee as well. So it is 90-10 as well.
One of the other things that is interesting, especially if you're bringing back a film, is to think about releasing it worldwide at the same time. And being able to do that will obviously decrease piracy in other countries, but also just be a way that you can galvanize all the attention that's online to one destination, to one point, and to maximize all of that at the same time.
I'm going to bring the microphone to Jill Drew, who's in the audience, who is the keeper of the flame of the Drew Associates collection, which is on Sundance now. And so the Drew Associates collection, includes all these tremendous films from the 1960s that were worked on by Robert Drew and D.A. Pennebaker and Richard Leacock, and some of the early ones with Al Maisels. And when Robert Drew died last year, and his wife, Andrew, who had been his filmmaking partner, had died a couple years earlier, Jill Drew, Robert's daughter-in-law, took over the collection, and we put 10 films up on Sundance Now Club. These are 10 fantastic documentary classics, many of which had really never been available commercially before, including Jane, the great film by D.A. Pennebaker and Hope Ryden as filmmakers with the other Drew Associates team. So, Jill, I want to ask you your experience, being holding this collection now, keeping the reins of this collection. What are the things that have made it? What are things that you've learned from this experience of pointing out these older films?
Thank you, and thank you all for making these platforms available for the older films, and for, like one of you said, introducing a new generation of filmmakers to these great films. Sort of in keeping with the question you just had, when Ann and Bob were alive, their view of internet viewing of their films was piracy. They never wanted copies of their films to be available online. And so that has been evolution, and some of their most well-known films have been available on DVD. So right around the time that Bob passed, the rights to our distribution rights to some of their biggest films, Primary and Crisis, were up for grabs. And so I did an experiment, and I put Crisis on Vimeo on demand, and it was super easy. I didn't contact anybody saying I'm from Drew Associates and how can I do this. It was super easy. And one thing you didn't mention that I love is the stats. You get notified every time somebody buys it. You get all these stats. You can look at where in the world they bought it. All these things that would have been hard for me to build into our website. But I have to say that the revenue from that is pretty small unless you do the marketing that they're talking about. We didn't do any marketing, and people who found it did buy it. We did keep 90% of the revenue. It was all very seamless, so I was very happy with that. But for a bigger splash, we worked with Lynn Pan and Tom to go on to the Sundance Now Club. And for us, because it's really just me who's trying to get these films digitized and then get them out to the public, we don't have a marketing arm. And so Linda had almost like a template that I could follow of here's the blurb you write, here's how many words it is, here is where you post it, here's some of our films were not digitized. We had them on HD Cam or Digibeta, and so she paid for, or Sundance Now paid for, the digitization. It's not great because it's just the regular standard transfer from a Digibeta tape, but it's good enough for the web, and these are not inexpensive. And so it was a great first step for me to just get these films out there. And I have to say that we do just watch where things have been pirated, where things start to pop up. I have not seen a huge spike in those films elsewhere, even though some of them, most of them, have not been available online. So that, I guess those are my answers.
Well, we have run out of time here, but we'll send our guests out to lobby, and if you want to buttonhole them for other questions, you can. We're going to turn this room over, and we'll be back here at noon for our next panel, which is about legal issues, clearances and legal issues, and also talking about some very important works that have recently been restored. So please come back here at noon, and thanks very much to our panelists, Jeremy, George, Adam, and Linda.